The Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast is brought to you by the following sponsors: EliteForm.com, IgnitionAPG.com, PlayUSA at PLAEUSA.com, and Sorinex Exercise Equipment at Sorinex.com. And now, the Iron Game Chalk Talk podcast. Welcome to Iron Game Chalk Talk with your host, Ron McKeefery.
Every time our athletes walk into this weight room, they're going to be pushed to the max.
Let's go! Everything you got!
On this podcast, hear Coach McKeefery straight talk about training, featuring the top strength and conditioning professionals from around the world. And now, here's your host, Ron McKeefery.
Guys, welcome back to Iron Game Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Ron McKeefery, and this is episode number 149. One away from 150 episodes, and I want to take a moment just to thank everybody for their support of the show and support of this project. Can't believe that we're close to 150 episodes, and so I just really appreciate you taking the time and spending a little bit of your valuable time joining us each week for these episodes. So thank you for that. This week, got Brandon Lilly with us. Brandon is a fantastic competitive athlete, power athlete, one of the best in the world, and he's the author of the Q Method. He consults for many pro and college programs, and just a fantastic person. Great story, how he's overcome trials and tribulations, and went from a soccer player to one of the strongest people on the planet. And so real excited to share his story with you. We get into the Q Method, where he sees performance coaching going. We are both, I believe he's speaking out the Sorinex Ever Strong. I know he did last year, but just a wealth of information. I know you're going to get a ton out of it. Before we do want to recognize our sponsor for this episode, which is Sorinex. They got Summer Strong coming up, here pretty soon. And if you have not registered for Summer Strong, again, it is such an important thing for you to do, in my opinion. I think you have to. It's an experience. It's one of those deals where you're not going to leave being the same strength coach you did when you came in. There's so many incredible people, starting with Bert and Richard and the Soren family and all the individuals that work at Sorinex, just fantastic people. But the people that they surround themselves with, the incredible stories and feats of strength and overcoming adversity will change how you look at things in a big, big way. And so I don't believe this is a clinic that you should just go to get better as a strength coach. I think it's something that is an experience that you must go through for you to become the strength coach that you should go to. And so I'm speaking on Sunday, tons of great speakers prior to me. Just, it's one of the conferences that I'm most nervous to present to, just because of the people that are in the room. And so if you have not registered, go to summerstrongexpo.com, register for that. Let's make that the best event of the year, and excited to see everyone there. Lastly, Ask Coach Mac. It's a podcast I've started recently to answer your questions. And so if you have a question for me, I get hundreds and hundreds of emails with questions and try my best to get back to everybody, but it's hard to do. And so I created this podcast to be able to answer your questions on a platform to where I can hopefully do it one time and be able to share that with many, many people. And so if you have a question and you would like it to potentially be featured on the show, go to AskCoachMac.com and leave your question by hitting the start recording button at the bottom of the page, or the send voicemail on the right-hand side. You can just speak your question right then and there. And so I want to get to this episode with Brandon. Tons of great information. Pull out your notepad. You're going to take tons of notes, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, guys, super excited to have Brandon Lilly with us. If you follow lifting at all, this guy really needs zero introduction. 2,200 plus raw totals. 16th. Did you move up from 16th?
I think right now I'm somewhere between 13th and 14th. The numbers change every week because so many guys are getting strong. But yeah, definitely top 20 all time.
Yeah.
Raw with wraps at 22:37. I did a 21:10 with just a belt and
Wow.
26:12 with multiply gear.
Wow.
So
Wow. Well, like I
kind
said,
of
man, I mean, just an accomplished lifter, accomplished athlete, an accomplished coach, and man, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on the show, brother.
no time taken out, man. This is what I live for, to talk to other, highly qualified people and share stories. And, if I can help somebody get stronger, that's what it's all about.
That's awesome, man. Well, Brandon, hey, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about the journey a little bit. I mean, go from all-state soccer player to those astronomical totals there as a competitive power athlete.
So for me, whenever I was in high school, I was a very, very good soccer player. And I wanted to go to a university to play. I wanted to be recruited. And everybody that I was talking to was telling me the school you go to is too small. You play and you dominate. You're kind of the king of the mountain, but you're in a small field.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a really big high school just across town, and a lot of my friends went there. A lot of guys that I was competitive with, and I ended up transferring and didn't move residence. Well, there's a high school in Kentucky, Lexington Catholic. They're a national power, or were for a long time in football and basketball, and they recruited kids from all over the U.S. So they, because of them, they had a recruitment law that if you switched high schools, you had to move residence.
Mm-hmm.
And because didn't move residence, um, even though the curriculum was more collegiate based and so on and so forth, I was one of the first cases that the state reviewed, and mine was rejected. And the next four kids that went from the same school to the bigger school in the same school year that I did, they all got approved.
Wow.
Mine was rejected, and the next four got approved. So anyway, I get to the new school. I'm basically, my hands are tied. As far as I can't play soccer. I don't have anything to do. So I started getting in trouble. Nothing bad, but just boys will be boys kind of stuff.
Sure.
Skipping class, whatever. And thank God for a coach named Travis Lynch. He was a history teacher of mine, and he just came up to me and he was like, he said, "B, something's going on in that head of yours, and I want to figure it out." And I was like, "All right, what's up?" He said, "I was just seeing your grades start slipping. I've seen you start cutting class." He said, "You're better than that." He said, "Meet me in the weight room at 5 o'clock." So I went in there and he's like, "I need a workout partner. You need to work out some of this energy." So he put me through a workout, and I'll never forget. I mean, I was weak, bad weak, but it stimulated something inside of me. I don't know if it was anger or sadness or what, but I remember doing. I was doing these chests press on a hammer strength machine, and I just started crying like out of nowhere. Just emotions hit me, and he was like, "Yeah, man, just get it out. Just keep going. Just let it out. Whatever it is, get it out." And I remember going home that night and feeling the soreness kicking in and all that stuff. And he saw me that next morning. He said, "I'll see you at 5 o'clock again." And I just kept going and kept going and kept going. And he really pushed me, like it would almost like the kind of relationship we had. He was a guy that would hug you and, pat you on the back and tell you he loved you kind of guy. Something that would make a teacher a criminal these days. You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's the world we live in.
Unfortunately.
But because of him and one other teacher, they saved me. I won't say they saved my life, but in a way they made my life for me, because they introduced me to the weight room. And the other teacher, Miss Waterbury, she got me to go to college. And because of the strength that I developed, I got my eligibility at the end of the year, and I got to throw some. I got to throw shot put. And because of that, I started excelling in the shot put. Went to college, threw the shot, threw the hammer, and that got me entry to the weight room as well, which was kind of the secondary bonus. And just kept lifting weights, kept meeting good people, and got around some people that followed the West Side system. And the very first powerlifting coach I had, he gave me just a stack of Powerlifting USAs. And he said, "Take this, read as much as you can, digest as much as you can, and just fall in love with it."
Right.
So that's what I did. I mean, I don't know why it was powerlifting. I mean, I did a variety of sports: baseball, basketball, soccer. I was a swimmer, through shot, but lifting weights is just what stuck. So because of the idolization that I had for Westside, and the guys that I trained with and the way we looked up to Westside, obviously that became a goal of mine was to go there. And I worked my way up. Well, backtrack just a little bit. I did my first competition when I was 19. I competed in NASA, which was Drug Testing Federation. 19, I did 660, 440, and 670. That's a 660 squat, 440 bench, and a 670 deadlift for a 1770 total.
Wow.
I was 219 pounds. So 3-time squat, 2-time bench, and a 3-time deadlift. So I was pretty proud of those numbers.
Sure.
And went back to another competition, same federation, and put up a little bit bigger numbers. Not much, but just a little bit bigger. And when they drug tested me, and at this time I was still living with my parents. I was home with my parents for summer, and my dad considered whey protein. Anything that was in a jar was a steroid. So, I mean, I was on beef and rice. That was it, and eggs. So anything that I could have taken from a bottle was off limits. And I remember one time I came home with some creatine, and he made me pour it out. And but anyway, I do the second competition, and they drug tested me, and it was no fail, but the test couldn't read for whatever reason. So I had 2 tests that didn't read, which became a ban, and they were like, well, you can't compete it anymore. So I got pissed off and kind of got sidetracked and went into strongman for a little bit. And actually, that was probably one of the best moves that ever happened, because strongman is such a challenging event in and of itself. You're gonna know what you're weak at really quickly.
No doubt.
And I was still training with some powerlifters, but I was training with some really, really good strongmen, some Highland Games guys, and I was just a very well-rounded individual as far as the people that I trained with. We trained in a very, very small gym, about 40 guys, and I remember counting 12, 13, 14 of them. No, it was very blue collar. No rhyme or reason to what they were doing. Had 12 or 13 guys bench over 450 and 500. Had several guys squatting in the 500s and 600s, 700-pound pullers, and phenomenal physiques. I mean, are you a powerlifter? No, I just train. Are you a bodybuilder? No, I just train. And that was kind of always my mentality, was just train your ass off and see what happens, And you were either respected for how big you were or how strong you were, and that was it. There was no social media then. There was none of that crap. You were only as good as what you were. So that gym was great for me. And then accelerate a little bit. I remember doing a meet in 2009. It was a pro-am. Put up a pretty good total. And Louis Simmons was there. And he said, if you stay on this track, you got a good shot at coming to Westside. So he and I developed a relationship. And next thing you know, I'm at Westside. And I was there for a year. I went through a lot of personal stuff at that time. I lost a job at GM, separated from my family. At the time, I was going through a pretty nasty, well, it wasn't a nasty divorce, it was just divorce.
Right.
Nothing fun about that. And my heart was in it, but my head wasn't. And Louis told me that, I just needed to step back and get myself straightened out. And when I came back, or when I got my head right, come back and see him. So, long story short, I ended up training at Lexington across town with Chuck Vogelpohl. And in that second year in Columbus, I did get my head on straight a little bit. Numbers started coming back around, and I started getting stronger. I had a really good meet, and had a lot of momentum going into to the Arnold Classic. And I did really poorly, and I prepared nearly as perfectly as I could. So here I was. I had a perfect preparation for the Arnold Classic, underperformed terribly. And that's when I decided, that the gear was just not a good representative of how strong I actually was. So I decided to take the gear off, go back to training raw. And in doing so, I was still training a lot of the Westside principles, 5-3-1.
Sure.
But I started reading a lot of other things, and I started formulating, that I was just beating myself into the ground. And slowly but surely, that's where I got the original rotation of the cube. And I created the cube method, which is each day is given a special intensity. So on squat day, let's say that intensity is heavy. Your bench day is going to be for repetition. Your deadlift day is going to be for speed.
Right.
And then your fourth day is then going to be for, cleanup, kind of bodybuilding day,
yeah, sure.
any kind of weaknesses. The next week, everything rolls forward. So if your squat was heavy, it's now for repetition. The bench, which was for repetition, is now for speed, so on and so forth. The days get, an individual preference or performance, but every 3 weeks, one of the lifts is downloaded.
Right.
Or each lift is downloaded every 3 weeks. So you could always keep training at a fairly high rate while one lift was taken off every week. So it worked out really well. I started writing a lot of articles about it just because when I got back into lifting, I put up a 2,100 pound total my first meet back. And then that grew to a 2,200 and so on and so forth.
Right.
And people were curious about it. And I didn't even know that I was writing an ebook when I was doing it. I just was sharing information and sharing articles and put it together in an ebook. And, it really took to the masses and people did well with it. So, it's been a 16-year journey, but, from athlete to online coach to in-person coach to writing a book. I mean, it's been pretty amazing.
No,
almost half my life, is now invested in this.
That's awesome. There's tons to pull out there. I want to go back. You talked about Travis Lynch and Miss Waterbury, having that kind of impact on your life. And now that you've kind of transitioned, I mean, you're still a competitor, you're still an athlete, but you're doing more coaching as well. I would imagine that's kind of why you got into that. That's why you got into coaching, is to try to have that kind of impact on some other athletes in their lives as well.
Yeah. Well, I would sit and watch guys in the gym, and I looked at the people in my own life. Travis Lynch, Miss Waterbury, my original coach Robbie Burns, who is one of the strongest human beings I've ever met. He just never really cared too much about the platform. He just one of those strong guys that was tucked away in a gym. And without those people, who the hell would I be? Where the hell would I be?
Right.
And how selfish or how negligent would it be of me to watch a kid make the same mistakes that I made and not offer some assistance, So, anybody that I've ever trained with, maybe not at Westside because there it's a little bit more of everybody's really damn good. So you just kind of fend for yourself situation.
Right.
But, in the other gyms or situations I've been at, I've always tried to extend as much knowledge transfer to the other lifters as I could because, who knows who the next superstar is, Right. I was never a strong guy right off the bat. I was terribly weak in the beginning, and I was willing to outwork most people to get strong. So I never underappreciate somebody's willingness to come to the gym and learn.
Absolutely.
And if they're showing up and they show a desire to learn, I'll give them as much information as I can. I welcome the whys. People say, "Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that?" Man, I'm a talker. I can sit there and talk to people all day about it. So,
absolutely.
I think without question, those people motivated me to want to help others. I mean, that's always been something that I've been driven to do is help people get strong, because it carries over to much more than just the barbell.
No question. In the show here, we try to talk, we talk a little bit about, I think everybody gets into it for those reasons a lot of times, is they've had somebody make that kind of impact on their lives. And as you go through your process, you make all kinds of mistakes as a coach. What's maybe one of the biggest mistakes you've made as a coach, and then kind of how you learn from that?
So, again, this goes back to Westside. And, Louis was really, really good about being an open book as far as whatever he knew he was willing to share.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and you may understand this as an athlete mindset, when you're told that you were good and you're looking at your numbers and where you stack up, like I said, I've had some top 20 totals, won some really, really big meets against some really great lifters. And I'm looking at all this stuff, and it's like, before you kind of have life smack you in the face, you know everything.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And my biggest probably coaching failure was there was a window of 3 to 4 years where you couldn't tell me anything. I was on that streak of anything and everything I did worked. I got stronger without reason. I just trained hard. I didn't know what I was training, why I was training. I just put weight on the bar and lifted, and I got stronger. And because of that, I started neglecting all the lessons that had been given to me, for a long time. And when I was at Westside, um, I thought I was King Kong, And not that Louis didn't tell me things; he told me things, but I didn't give him the weight or the I guess the recognition of the information, So now when I've gone back and talked to Louis, I was just up there a couple weeks ago for breakfast, and I'm picking his brain. I'm wearing him out because I know, as argumentative as people are about the West Side method and this, that, and the other, whether you like Louis, whether you don't, whether you like his methods, whether you don't, you can't argue that some of the strongest men in the world and women in the world have trained under his coaching.
Yep.
And why is that? Is it because he got the best people? Is it because he had the best gym? Is it because he had the best equipment? Or is it because he knows something? And when you strip it all down, he's coached anybody and everybody, so he knows something.
Right. Right.
So I think if anybody can take this away, whenever I go do seminars, whenever I go speak to people or listen to seminars, I try to find one piece of information that's new, whether it's irrelevant to me at the time or not. I try to tuck something away that I've never heard before, because sure enough, down the road, maybe it's 2 or 3 years later, I'll have that light bulb moment where that point makes sense. You know what I mean? And it's relevant to a conversation.
Absolutely.
So no information that you gather is bad information. It's just more information. And I think now I'm probably reading and studying more than I ever have in my life, because the more you know, the more you realize there's more to know.
That's right.
And that's why I've been working, actually, like I said, I did the cube book and didn't even know I was doing a cube book. I've actually sat down and written a cube method as if I were to try to put it on your bookshelf, something that a true strength coach would want on their shelf. And I can't finish it because every time I do, I have beta test groups doing work, and I'm getting new information. And I'm like,
Right.
I don't want to put out this book without the latest information in it, And at some point, I'm just going to have to put the final period in it. But that's a case in point, is that I could update this book once a month, and it would still be outdated by the time I print it off. You know what I mean?
Right.
So the information is just ever growing.
Absolutely. Well, I think, I talk about on the show quite a bit about, as a strength coach, you need to be principle-based, not philosophy-based. So you can't be West Side, you can't be Cube, you can't be triphasic, you can't be tier system. You need to understand the principles of overload and progression. And so you and I can have a conversation about how we go about overloading the system.
Yep.
And both walk away having learned something. But if I go in as triphasic and you're coming at it from the cube, then we're gonna differ,
Right.
And so ultimately, I think that's how you become a better strength coach. Is you have an open mind, like you said. Everything is knowledge that you can either tuck away to support your argument, or knowledge that you tuck away to use it at a later time, or to really contemplate what you're doing in your own programming. And so I totally agree. I want to dig into the cube method a little bit.
Okay.
I love talking to people that innovate concepts, and obviously, you didn't invent any of those exercises, or maybe or maybe those progressions, but you put it all together into a real solid package that worked for you and worked for many other people.
Yeah.
What really drove you? Where was the gap? What did you see, coming out of some of the other systems that really drove you? I would think it had something to do with maybe recovery, in terms of being able to hit those exercises in different ways.
So one of the things that I've kind of argued with Louis about, peacefully argued, I'd say, is that
is there such a thing as peacefully arguing with Louis?
No, not at all. But I was a guy that I was willing to find a way, do or die, to hit the PR all the way throughout the training.
Right.
And the West Side system is set up, you PR until you fail.
Right.
And my failure just happened to currently happen most of the time at the meet.
Right.
I would get strong as hell because that's what Louis told me to do.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, you don't miss this lift. Well, I became a better box squatter than I was a free squatter. I became better at good mornings than I was at my deadlift. I became good at all the things that Westside preached about, but I wasn't a good competitive lifter. So number one, I had to go back and I had to make the sport specific practice number one. Okay. And then number two was I realized Louis was right on the mark of all these sport like movements, a safety squat bar or pause squats or wide stance versus Olympic stance on the bench, doing close grip versus your competition grip, on and on and on. So I utilized that. I just flipped the order.
Right.
And then, because of what we were talking about, just getting pounded in the ground going 80, 90% all the time, I was like, you know what? If we remove the bands and looked at the percentages, um, my mind I could go on a spiel about this for a while, but I realized that I needed a heavy day and I needed a day. My body responded to repetition as a raw lifter. There's a picture of Kazmaier that I saw, and I was like, that's what I want to look like. So I never want to be this guy that just gets big to fill out a squat suit.
Right.
And honestly, when I went to Westside, I was 265, 275 as a strongman powerlifter. I was strong as hell. I had abs. I was able to run a mile. I was able to do all kinds of things. I was an athlete.
Right.
And when I got to Westside, Louis said, we need you to be a 308 at all costs. So that wasn't his fault. His mentality was, you lift the weights, give yourself time, you're going to be a 308. I heard, get to 308 as
Right.
fast as you possibly can. And I became a fat ass. I became good at three things: squat, bench, and deadlift. And so I wanted to reverse all of those things. I wanted to be strong on the top end. I wanted to be fast on the low end. And I wanted to be able to do reps. I wanted to be able to. So I looked at this and I said, okay, if I go heavy one day and I do a bunch of repetition work the next day for like bodybuilding purposes, and then I deload the next lift, and then I do my cleanup day on the fourth day, let's see how this feels. And me and a guy named Jimmy Harris were doing it. And man, this is a 38-year-old guy, never benched 500 pounds in his life, and he was benching 465. And the next thing we know, he's benching 515.
Wow.
And it was because we dropped that second bench day because we were killing ourselves with the overloads and whatnot. But what I found was the overloads were good as long as you stayed in the ballpark of what you should be doing. But what do you do when you're a guy like us? Put more overload on, put more overload on.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up breaking ourselves down. So in an effort to undo that, we just went all the way away from bands and chains for a while. It wasn't like they don't work. It was just, let's just do a 180 for a little bit and see what happens. And we both got stronger. And, slowly and delicately, I've reintroduced the bands and chains a little bit now, 4 years later.
Right.
But I really had to understand and appreciate how the body could work and then how the bands and chains could be added to that before I felt comfortable putting back in the system. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, and they're absolutely my biggest pet peeve in the world is going into a gym with a new lifter and seeing them on bands and chains. It's like you have so much growth potential with this athlete, and all you're doing is making yourself look like a better coach than you really are by giving them something they can't comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
Just put bar weight on them and let them grow for a long time. I mean, yeah. So when you go into a gym and you see a novice lifter doing these advanced type movements, it really tells me what kind of a jackass the coach is.
Right.
Like I can make myself appear a lot more intelligent by giving you something that you can't understand, when really I should be breaking it down to the most simple measure possible: barbell, dumbbell. That's what 85% of my clients get as barbell, dumbbell movements. No machines, no nothing. Let's do some meat and potatoes work. And if you can do that for a year to 3 years, then I'll give you a little bit more. You have to earn it.
Right.
And I think so many programs are looking for the secret recipe or the secret thing. The secret thing is work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And building a work capacity that is continuously adapting to the workload you're given. And I've never seen anybody get better by working less. So, you have to find, I do agree that there's an optimal point, but man, if you drive somebody hard and you let them adapt to that hard work, you're going to get something special.
No question. Well, that's ultimately why the barbell and plates haven't changed in over 100 years, right?
Exactly.
Well, you know, with the cube method specifically, I mean, you do some consulting for some high level SEC and pro organizations and things like that. I mean, I have with college football, I have 8 weeks in the winter. I have 8 weeks in the summer. You know, bookmark that, or you know, with in season spring ball and an in season 12, 16 week program. What, you know, how would you modify the cube method for the college setting to get, you know, we're not deadlift maxing, but we're bench maxing, one arm squat maxing, things like that.
So what I do is I try to give the coaches or the athlete individually an idea of what we're trying to achieve. We're not trying to build 700 and 800 pound squatters. We're not trying to build 600 pound bench pressers. What we're trying to get is repetition and growing the effort that we can condense into your workout. So for a lot of times, like for me with my, let's say a lineman, what I'll do with the lineman is I'll actually have them do a lot of one-arm snatches because it mimics the 3-point stance, builds explosiveness. I'll have them get down and do a trap bar standing on a deficit because they have to explode. Now, where in the game is a receiver going to have his hands on the ground? He's not. So why not have him do his block pulls with a trap bar at about knee high, where he starts from when he's been over on the line waiting for the height, you know, and he comes up from there. Building these things and understanding, okay, we don't need you to be a 1-rep guy or a 2-rep guy. My linemen are 3 to 5 rep guys. My backs are somewhere in the 5 to 8 range, and my receivers are somewhere in the 6 to 10 range on the repetitions. It's just understanding the kind of muscles that they're going to be using, the amount of repetition work that they're going to be getting, and trying to adapt the days to their needs. You're not going to, on paper, the heavy day in the cube method for a powerlifter is going to look very, very similar to a rep day for what I would give an athlete. You know what I mean? Their heavy day is going to be a rep day. Their rep day for an athlete is going to look very similar to a speed day for a powerlifter. And their speed day is probably going to be eliminated altogether to do more of an accessory type bodybuilding day, and then have 2 bodybuilding days along with the rep and the heavy day for their training. Right. They're not going to need a speed day because most of these kids are already so explosive. They don't need much more of that work. So what I'm trying to get these coaches to understand is we need to build the body parts individually and then test them through the heavier in the speed days or the heavier in the rep days. And for the people that I've had to implement it that way, it's had some pretty good results. And kids look better, they feel better. I'm not pushing them to a limit of high stress. But what you've got to get, and you know this because what you just said, you got 8 weeks here, 8 weeks here, 8 weeks here. And I think that's a detriment to the athlete. If you could get the head coaches to buy into this kid is here 1 year at a time.
Right.
We can't look at this as I'm going to bust his ass for 8 weeks and he's not going to train for a little bit, then he's going to come back and train. That's just a recipe for disaster. You need to give a sustainable year-to-year program and have year-to-year goals. I think, hey now, come over here. And you need to have year-to-year goals that these kids can buy into because a lot of times these kids don't have any understanding of where they're going. You and I do.
Right.
You and I know where we want them to go. But I think if you can give a kid a roadmap year-to-year where he's going, what he could be if he buys in, then you've really got something sustainable that you can build on.
Right.
And a lot of times programs don't invest in that. They want to do an 8-week cycle, so they give them 8 weeks worth of programming. I think these kids respond much, much better if you can say, you know what, you're 200-pound lifter right now or 200 pounds body weight right now. If by the end of year 1 we can get you to 215, we're rolling. By the end of year 2, we get you to 230. And then look, your top 15 NFL draft picks at your position weigh between 240 and 250. By the end of year 3, if we can get you there and then play your senior year at that high level,
right,
you give them an understanding of where they're going. And I think with some of these kids, you have to browbeat them to get them to that point. But I've found more and more and more, if you treat them with respect and treat them like an adult and show them the potential benefit. We were just talking about this beforehand.
Right.
But if you can show a kid the potential benefit, hopefully he's going to buy into what you have to say, and you're not going to have to spend your whole time screaming at him.
No question.
He's going to just say, you know what, I got the 5 of the lottery numbers in my body, my genetics. If I listen to coach, that's the Powerball.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
No, that's a great way of putting it. I think that's something that we talk about quite a bit as well. Is with me and with our athletes, the why meaning is everything. You mentioned that early on. When you understand their why, what's football for them? Is it a release to get? Is it an opportunity to get away from a bad situation at home? Is it an opportunity for them to provide for a family? Is it just simply, they're good at it, and they're expected to do it. What's their why? And then you turn around and you define what's good, and so like you mentioned with the NFL Combine statistics, or with statistics that are specific to them, then you start to frame out what they need to be doing on their own. They set their own goals, and you're able to determine the how and the what, after you determine the why.
Well, I spent some time at LSU, and I was privileged to see some of the work ethic on a down period. Guys they were in there for elective workouts, and I come back to UK, and I'm talking to a kid, and I'm like, "What'd you do for the last 5 weeks?" Because he had a down period. He was like, nothing, man. I didn't lift." And I was like, "So you're telling me that you're on a team that is trying to not only establish itself as a top 25 power, but is trying to get into the top 25, chasing the SEC, which we're already behind. And these guys down here who are in the top 5, who are SEC powers, are killing themselves, and you're doing less work?
Yeah.
You're at home playing Grand Theft Auto, and these guys are down there 6 o'clock in the morning, honest to God, on a Saturday, busting out power cleans, soaking in sweat.
Right.
Like, they got me so fired up, I wanted to lift.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, how can you ever – and I'm not just saying – I'm just using that one kid from UK as an example. That kid, far and away, is more of the mainstream than the exception. And that's what I try to get across to these guys. No matter how hard you work for these 4 years, you will look back and say you could have done more.
That's right.
If you're the number 1 draft pick, you will look back and say, man, I could have done more. I could have been better prepared. And I think a lot of times coaches, I don't know if it's because they shy away from their inability to progress the kids, or if they're just that afraid of hurting the kids' feelings. But like I said, if you want to be an SEC top lineman, you have to bench 400 pounds 3 times. Mm-hmm. And if this kid is benching 275, how in the hell do we get you from 275 to 405 for 3? Right. Or do we just have to admit you're never going to be that elite guy, and we have to get you to the best that you can be for as many reps as you can be?
Right.
And what are you willing to give me to get there?
No question.
And getting the kid to buy in and understand. Bud Dupree, he's a perfect example. Kid is an absolute freak. He was a monster on all the stuff, but he didn't have a good bench press. So you know what he did? He worked harder than hell at everything else. Didn't bench at the combine, and was so impressive in everything else. Nobody cared what he benched.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But for a kid who's on the bubble, Bud Dupree's a freak. For a kid who's on the bubble, he better sure as hell figure out how to get that bench press up. He better sure as hell figure out how to get his 40 time up. And it shouldn't be because I care.
Right.
He should be looking in the mirror saying, man, this is my only way out.
That's right. That's right. Well, go ahead.
And the coaches need to gravitate. And what I would try to do in a gym setting is I'm going to put my guys who are struggling with those leaders, because those leaders are going to rise up, and hopefully along the way they're going to bring kids up with them. A lot of times what I see is the strongest guys or the best guys click together. And while that's a good thing, I try to break them apart, because they need to trickle some of that down to the lesser kids, and then give those kids a reason. Because, like I've said before, if I'm going to come in here and bust my ass for 2 hours, you're going to give me 2 hours of the best you got, or I don't want anything to do with you. And slowly but surely, some of the kids, they'll fall off, but some of the kids will rise up, and that's what you're always looking for, is those middle ground kids to do more than what you expect them to do.
Absolutely. That's what we always talk about with our guys, is it's every one of those kids, everybody's doing an 8-week winter, and everybody's doing an in-season program. And, so it's those times when you have the option to do something or not do something, it determines your success. Or likewise, from an evaluation standpoint, I'm expecting you to do good in certain things. I want to know
Sure.
what you're not good in and see if there's a
Yep.
potential there to improve that. And so I completely agree with what you're saying. I want to switch gears a little bit. As an athlete, as a competitive athlete, and then and then getting into coaching and things along those lines. I mean, that's what we all do, right? We like lifting weights, so we naturally gravitate to teaching people how to lift weights, and then we get into the business of coaching people to
Yep.
lift weights. Where do you see this field going? I mean, as a coach, and you've done some really cool things from an entrepreneurial standpoint and things along those lines. Where do you see this field going, and how we can maximize it as coaches and earn income to be able to support staying as an athlete or things along those lines?
Well, number one, I think it's a dangerous time for strength coaches right now because we're in a day and age where strength coaches are being outsourced for scientists.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think that's got to be, you have to understand, and I'm talking to any university head that is listening, nothing will beat a guy who's been under the bar and who can put his hands on the bar, put his hands on a lifter, and show them how to do it.
Right.
No amount of science will give you what a good strength coach can give you. Let that be number one. But science is cool, and science is pretty pictures and diagrams and all that kind of stuff. And like there are certain things that I know watching a kid that I can't put into words and I can't put on a pie chart,
Right.
but I can damn sure make that kid strong.
Agreed.
So that makes me a valuable resource, even if it's not a repeatable resource. I'm valuable for that reason. So head coaches and universities need to understand that. Coaches in the strength department need to have the security that if they're doing their job, if they're busting their ass and they're getting results, just because a new head comes in, they don't lose their job. Where else does that happen?
Right.
And if a person takes over a Fortune 500 company, he doesn't fire everybody below him and bring in his whole new staff. No, he says, okay, how has this company been so great for so long? There are situations where you might need to fire the strength staff, but yourself, Tennessee, you're a very capable coach. I'm not saying you did deserve to be fired. I'm not saying you didn't deserve to be fired. But if you've done your job, you at least deserve to have the foot to stand on to say, my job is safe
Right.
until you prove otherwise.
Right.
So that would be for one. Now, for coaches like yourself that are well known, well respected, there are avenues out there. I'm looking at Train Heroic. It's an app where I can plug my information in, my workouts, randomized from anything from a CrossFit style workout, not that I do, but I'm saying a coach can, to a strength curve, to a powerlifting, to a bodybuilding, to a cycling,
Right.
to whatever it might be. And instead of having to work one-on-one and put pen to paper for 200 athletes, I can have 200 athletes plug in as much information about their own lifting and then put the program in. And now it becomes more personalized to their own lifts and their own goals. And that's going really well. And when a person can work hands-on with you one-to-one through this app for $10 to $20 to $30 a month,
Right.
a dollar a day or less, how is that? I mean, that's a win-win for everybody. And you look at along the lines of getting 150 to 200 to 300 athletes. I think Dave Spitz has somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,000 athletes or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
At $10 a month, that's $50,000 a month. And I mean that's incredible, and that's the way it should be.
Right.
Like I said, we have something, a knowledge that may not necessarily be a pie chart or a bar graph or whatever, but I know how to put a damn good workout together, and I know how to get you results. So I'm going to give you something that nothing else can give you, something that you can grow from and build from, and that's one way. Another way is to get out and start speaking to coaches. If you put on a seminar, I'm going to come and listen to it because you're a guy that I know and respect and look up to. And I had a kid, I'll tell you what, I used to drive to Westside 3 times a week, 3 hours each way, back and forth. Leave at 3 in the morning, have breakfast with Louis at 6, train at 8, drive back to be work at 1 p. or 2 p.m. And I did that for almost 6 months, 3 times a week, every day or every week. And I had a kid, I was doing a seminar in New York City, and a kid messaged me and he was like, "Man, that's like 45 minutes from my house. That's too far." And I'm like, "Then you don't want it." I mean,
That's right.
the truth of the matter is, if you want it, you will find a way. And if you're the kind of coach that can reach people, and you are, there are so many outsources that you can look into as far as working with other coaches, working with other athletes, setting up camps, setting up boot camps.
Right.
You just have to have a little bit of creativity and a willingness to put yourself out there. I've been criticized numerous times. Well, why is he putting on a seminar? Why is he doing this? Or who is he? And you know what? If somebody is coming to you, if it's one person, I've done a seminar for 4 people. Okay, one of the best seminars I ever did.
Right.
I lost money to go there.
Sure.
But it was early on. And you know what? Those 4 people invited me back the next year, and we had 37 people.
Right.
So you have to be willing. It's just like the coaching job itself. You have to be willing to put in the time and take those kind of knocks, and try to find the balance of your professional job with the outside job. And that's one of the things we talked about before. I left 2 business opportunities that were probably going to put a lot of money in my pocket. But I'm an athlete. I've never been a guy that sat down and said, you know what, I want to make $1 million. My goals have always been driven by how strong I was, who I could help, and whatnot. So I took a step back, and I'm really trying to focus more on the athlete side.
Right.
I've minimized the amount of one-on-one clients I have. I've driven more people to the app because I'm getting great results.
Sure.
And it's less time consuming than one-on-one, but I'm an athlete, and maybe in 5 years, if we have this conversation, I'll be like, man, I'm glad to be done competing, and I can do all these things coaching. But I was trying to balance both, and I was spread too thin and doing things that I didn't want to do. And when I lost that sense, it wasn't fun anymore. So now I'm back to the square one where I know who I am, I know the athlete that I am, I know the kind of coach that I am. And if anything that somebody asks me to do falls outside those parameters, you might as well call somebody else because I'm not going to do it. And I think when I spread myself too thin, people saw that and they said, you know what? He's just doing this for a buck.
Yeah.
He's not doing this because this is Brandon Lilly that we fell in love with watching or reading his material or whatever. Now it's about a buck, and I've never been about a buck, but when somebody's dangling money in front of your face, it's hard to say no.
Agreed.
And I've done that, and now I'm back to the point where I don't have to do that. I have a comfortable living. I don't have very many bills, and I've set myself up to the point where a nice, comfortable income is all I need. I don't need to be rich.
Well, I think the key things I pulled out of that were, one, just with all this stuff out there, all this technology and all these apps and all this science. You got to stay true to coaching and being able to interact with your athletes as close to one-on-one as you can. And there are some tools that like Train Heroic and some of the other ones you're talking about where you can interact with the masses, because that's one of the things as a coach that I always struggle with is, I'm a pretty good coach. I feel like I'm a pretty good coach. But at the end of the day, I only work with 105 football players every year,
Yep.
And I want to touch, I feel like I'm meant maybe to touch more than 105.
Sure.
But I love what I do, and wouldn't want to do anything else. And so things like Train Heroic allow you to do that, which is pretty cool. And, and at the end of the day, like you said, I think something we talk about on the show too is people sit around and they think that all I do all day long is do podcasts, It's like, I batch these and I put them on weekends and, or spring break like right now, and I'll knock out a bunch, but then I'm out there in the trenches coaching the whole time, And like you said, when people cast stones and things like that, at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're finding ways to monetize your learning experience. You're finding ways to and you're giving back along the way. And I think that's a noble thing personally.
Sure.
And so I commend you for that, man. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do. We always end the show here with a couple of resources. Give us the best piece of coaching advice you ever received.
The best piece of coaching advice I ever got is kind of a story in and of itself, and it's just be honest with your kids. Don't bullshit them. Don't build them up to be something that they're not. And the story I have is I just squatted 750 pounds in powerlifting and in multiply, and I go up to breakfast with Louie, and I'm the strongest guy far and away in our gym, puffed up chest. I'm thinking I'm King Kong. And I go sit down with Louie at breakfast, and he goes, "What'd you weigh?" And I said, about 265, 270. What'd you squat? And I said, 750. And he goes, I had a 181 woman squat 750. That ain't gonna cut it. And, the truth of the matter is, in a second, it took all the air out of my sails. But I went back home and I said, you know what? I'm never, ever going to feel that level of disappointment again
Right.
where, I think I'm better than I am. And a guy who's seen everybody and anybody looks at me and says, you're not so great.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that wasn't a knock on Louis. Louis he was honest. And his honesty is what drove me to be better. And I think you can sit there and sugarcoat an athlete's ability and their potential. There's a right and a wrong way to do it. But if you're always honest with those kids and you're always pushing them in a positive way and only negative when they need to hear the negative, I'm a guy that always says one negative for two positives.
Yep.
I'll give you one negative, but here's two things that you did right.
Right.
And they build a certain amount of respect around that, and they know you're not telling them something that they don't want that they don't need to hear. And a lot of times they'll buy in a lot quicker when they know that you're not just feeding them a line.
No question.
So I always think honesty with your athletes is the number one key. Like I said, not everybody's made to be a LeBron James or a Mike Vick or a Usain Bolt, and you just got to understand how good or how close to that can we get you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we have to understand some kids. I'm going to have you for 4 years at football, and you're going to be a guy that comes back every homecoming and shakes hands and is a fan favorite. You're just not going to play. But your effort in the weight room and your effort on the sideline is what's going to propel these guys forward. And that's the best role that you can do, is to be that guy that supports these guys. You just have to be honest with them. Do the best that you can do.
I agree with you, man. And, I think one of the biggest arts, lost arts of coaching now is to have those difficult conversations, and to be able to have a direct, honest conversation and define good and define where they're at and recognize the fact that you're there to help them be the best version of themselves. And you can only be supportive. And so I totally agree with you.
Well, you know this as well as I do. The lessons in the weight room and the lessons in sports go a lot longer than the sport themselves.
Agreed.
The lessons that I've learned in the weight room have carried me through the most grueling business deals I've ever had, the most trying times of my life, have come from lessons that I learned in the weight room. And it's like there were coaches and there were people there that supported me and gave me advice. And it's who you become through those tough times, and you really find out who you are. And good coaches help you identify with that.
Right. No, I agree with you. Well, man, we always we end it with this last question, and we're gonna make sure, because I couldn't recommend your book enough with the Q method, but we'll make sure we link that. But give us a book, app, and website recommendation for everyone.
All right. Here's the website recommendation. I'm going to give you three. There are three websites out there that I think are continuously pushing good information, honest information, and, there's some, Elite FTS, they're always putting out good information. My buddy Swede Burns is a phenomenal up-and-coming coach. He's a guy that I do seminars with 2 to 3 weekends a month. His blog and his coaching style, second to none. So Elite FTS, their stuff is always great, but check out Swede Burns. Juggernaut, they're always dedicated to putting out a wide variety of weightlifting, powerlifting, strongman, tons of science as far as the nutrition side. And I think they kind of do a good job of bridging the gap of, meathead and scientists. They do a good job of bringing them together in the middle. And then I'm still a fan of T Nation. There's a lot of clickbait articles on there. And if you just kind of get your way through some of that and you dig deep and look up the guys that you respect and know, there's still some good stuff out there. Jim Windler's on there. He's always putting out great stuff.
Yep.
And as far as books, here's the thing. I grew up reading Mike Mintzer's HIT stuff. Okay, that was the first book that showed me, no matter what Joe Weider said and all the Flex magazines and all the Muscle Mag said, here's Mike Mintzer over here doing his own thing, thinking in his own box. And because of that, I kind of relied on that book when I was doing the Q method in my head. It's like, people are going to think this is crazy. People are going to think this is outside the box. But if it works for me, let it work, you know? So I recommend the Mike Mincer, HIT, the Westside Book of Methods, and Mel Siff Super Training. You're not going to go wrong if you have those 3 books.
That's awesome, man. Well, brother, like I said, I've heard you speak. I've followed you from afar for a long time, and really, I truly appreciate the way that you go about your business and how you put it out there, and just honest and real. And man, that's like I said, it's a lost art, it's a lost form in a lot of respects, and I for one appreciate it. I know everybody that's listening does as well. So thanks so much, man.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, and I look forward to seeing you again.
That's it for this episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk. Thanks to this week's guest as well as our sponsors for bringing this episode to you for free. Make sure to check out ronmckeefery.com, where you can join our mailing list, find the show notes, including all the links and resources mentioned, and information about Coach McKeefery's other products. While you are there, please join Coach McKeefery in the comments section thanking our guest for sharing. If you haven't subscribed to Iron Game Chalk Talk on YouTube or iTunes yet, make sure to do so. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome. Coach McKeefery can be found on Twitter at @RMcKeefery, on Facebook and YouTube at /Ron.McKeefery. That's it for this week. Be sure to check back next week for another great episode of Iron Game Chalk Talk.